This video is sponsored by DistroKid. Follow the VIP link in the description down below to get 7% off an already amazing price to distribute your music to the world. This is Tricomp, a stock Studio One plugin which you may have either overlooked or misunderstood. But once you really try it, you may just love it. Hi folks, I'm Mike, and I hope you're well. Tricomp is of course a 3-band compressor, and you could use it on just about any source, especially those with a wide frequency range. I like to use it especially in my mastering chain, which is where I'm going to be using it for most of this video. Let's dive in. Just a couple of quick things. I won't be working through the controls of this plugin from left to right. Instead, I'm going to work through them in the order that I think you generally use them in, but I will be covering all of the controls. Secondly, as the name suggests, this is a 3-band compressor, but I'll be dealing with that aspect of it a little bit later on. First of all, I want to deal with the basic compression controls. And the most basic of the compression controls is the compress control right in the middle. This is the main control that you're going to use for the amount of compression you want to apply. There's no threshold control and there's no ratio control. They're automatic. So let's start off by playing my song and bringing in some compression. Now, if you can't hear it right away, you'll know it's starting to happen by looking at the gain reduction meter at the top here. Let's have a listen.
And I guess Superman never really ever gave a damn about Lois Lane, the Daily Planet, all the people there. He's just sure.
Now, don't worry if you're sitting thinking, I can't hear any difference yet. A lot of you will not be able to hear the difference yet. Some of you with eagle ears will be able to hear it, but that's partly because there's not a whole load of compression happening yet, making it too obvious. And did you notice that I had to turn this dial up a really long way before anything was really happening? So what I like to do in these sort of circumstances is increase the input gain. So I'll just move my compression knob down and I can increase the input gain over here on the left. Let's just, I don't know, increase it by 5 here, okay? That's going to be reasonably significantly louder. Now, whenever I increase input gain on a plugin like this, I also like to adjust the output gain to sort of compensate for that. So this is an increase of 5. I would normally at least start off by going to the output gain and reducing it by 5. Now, you may think that, well, why would you bother doing that? You just bring it back to where it was. Yes, that's true overall, but it does mean that because I've increased the input gain, we're going to be hitting that threshold on the compressor a little bit sooner. So we're going to get a little bit more control at least because compression is happening a little bit sort of further down this dial. So let's see what's happening now.
And I guess Superman never really ever gave a damn about Lois.
Now you can see that we're getting about the same amount of compression as we were before, but I've got a lot more leeway on this dial now. Let's turn it up a little bit so that you can definitely hear it.
And I guess Superman never really ever gave a damn about Lois.
Now, I would probably never compress it so much that you can hear it like that, but there is a situation where I would over compress like that during the process, and that's when I really want to hear the effects of the attack and release. Now, both the attack and release times can be automated with adaptive settings by clicking the auto button here. Now, once you do that, you can no longer adjust the release, of course, and you can click on the attack buttons for the timing, but they're not going to make any difference unless this is disengaged. Now, if we do disengage it, then we can adjust attack times from the fastest one, which is 0.1 milliseconds, through to the slowest one, which is 10 milliseconds. Okay. Now, with the release control, that ranges from 1 millisecond all the way through up to 3 seconds. Now, as I said earlier, sometimes I like to have this compression on an extreme setting so I can hear what's going on timing wise with this. And if I play the track now with such a long release time, you're going to hear some, well, pumping and things like that. Have a listen.
And I guess Superman
So a lot of the transients are actually triggering the compression here, but then we can kind of hear it raise up again gradually. We don't really want that, well, unless you do want that, but I don't want it. So I would adjust the release time here to something a lot lower, and I'll listen to it as I'm doing it.
And I guess Superman never really ever gave a damn about Lois Lane.
Now normally then I would back off the compression control here to something more reasonable.
And I guess Superman.
And finally, I just want to point out that although I did reduce the output gain earlier on, when we increased the input gain, now we're getting some gain reduction. I may compensate for that by just increasing this gain a little bit. I'm going to do it by ear really, but you could sort of measure it, I suppose, but no need for that.
And I guess Superman.
So now we get to the bread and butter of this being a 3-band compressor. So far, when we've been using this compress control in the middle here, we've been adjusting all 3 bands at the same time. But over to the left of this, we have some controls to adjust just the low frequency range and the high frequency range. So we're getting direct control over those 2 bands. Now, put simply, with these 2 controls at the top, low and high, if we want to compress the low frequencies more, then we just increase this knob. Now what's going to happen there is we're going to basically hear less low end because it's being compressed. There's been some gain reduction happening in those low frequencies. Let's have a listen to that.
And I guess Superman never really ever gave a damn about Lois Lane. The Daily Planet, all the people there, he's just showing off.
And the same principle applies for the high frequencies. So it's really very handy if you want to compress your track, but you want to get some more control over those low frequencies. They're getting out of control. Then you can choose to sort of push that up a little bit. And if you've got some high-end sizzly harshness, you could control it with this control here. That's a little better than using an EQ in some circumstances because you're not completely getting rid of those frequencies. You're only reducing them when they just get too loud. Now, in terms of which frequencies we're actually affecting with these 2 controls, we have some controls over the crossover point. So the point where the low frequency band crosses over into the middle frequency range is determined with this control down here, and you can see its value in hertz just below. And the same is true with the high frequency control. And of course, the middle frequencies are the difference between those 2. Now, before we move on to the saturation component of this plugin, I'd like to remind you that if you're releasing your music to platforms like Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon, Google Play, etc., you may want to check out our sponsored DistroKit. Follow that VIP link in the description down below and you'll get 7% off of your first year of membership. Now, one of the reasons a lot of people say they really like this plugin is because of the saturation in it. And you can see there's a saturation control at the bottom right here. Now, I will warn up front, it gets pretty out of control pretty quickly. If you just nudge it up a little bit, you'll get some fairly subtle saturation, but going much further and you're definitely going to hear it. And you might not like what you hear, but we'll talk about that in a moment. Let's just have a listen.
And I guess Superman never really ever gave a damn about Lois Lane.
You can hear already there, it's kind of out of control. You may want that kind of effect on a track. It's not something I'd want here, but there is a way which I may use this, and that is by using parallel compression. So that's where you have your original mix without this compression, and then you blend in the compressed signal. And even with a large amount or a lot of saturation like this, pretty harsh, that can work if you blend it into the correct level. And you do that on this plugin itself just by using the mix control. So I'm going to turn it all the way down to the bottom here, so we're only hearing the dry signal, and I'll gradually blend in the compressed signal with all that saturation. After I've done that, I'm going to quickly flick between the two like so that you can sort of hear an A-B kind of test, and I think you'll hear a difference quite quickly. Let's have a listen.
And I guess Superman never really ever gave a damn about Lois Lane, the Daily Planet, all the people there. He's just showing off, 'cause his parents didn't love him much, and you.
And do you hear, as I flick between the two quickly there, how the tracks seem to sort of open up and breathe a bit more? And I don't know, it was something, it had a little bit more sizzle to it, of course. So, you know, there's something you could think about making use of yourself. Now, there are occasions where you want the amount of compression applied to an instrument to be controlled by the signal or the level of another instrument. For that, we use sidechain compression. We can do that with Tricomp. We start off by clicking on the sidechain button here to enable it, and then we have to select our source. Now, on this occasion, my compressor is on my acoustic guitars in this song, and I want it to be controlled, or the level of compression controlled, by the bass guitar. So I'll click on this button here to select my source, which is going to be the bass. We can see that down here, so I'll click on that, and I'm also going to click on this icon here. What that's going to do is make sure that the level which is coming through from the bass is not affected by the fader on the bass channel. So I'll switch that on, and now if you look at the bass channel over here, you can see the send being sent from its sends to the compressor. And as I say, because this is a pre-fader send, and even if I adjust the fader on the bass, it doesn't change the level of that signal. However, I can change the level of that signal using this control here, which is the level that I'll send from the bass, if that makes sense. So let's have a listen to this acoustic guitar, turn up the compression, and see how the bass is affecting it. And you can see the compression happening there. You may not be super aware of it in terms of hearing it yet, but what I would do, because there's not a lot of signal coming through, is increase the level over here from the actual bass itself. I'll just pop that up. Okay, now you can really hear it. Probably a little bit too much, but that can be handy at times, as we discussed earlier. Now, it may be that you want to just reduce the low end of the guitar in this case to make room for the bass when it's playing. So what I would do in that case is to bring this compression down till it's just hitting a little bit. Yeah, then I would reduce this high frequency knob here, so it's not really affecting the high frequencies at all, but I might increase the low frequency knob so we start to really compress the low frequencies of the guitar disproportionately to the other frequencies. Let's have a listen. Okay, we can hear a little bit of pumping there, so let's turn auto off and adjust the release. And of course, I'd have to fine tune that, but you get the idea. Now, as I mentioned earlier, this is one of the stock plugins included with Studio One. If you'd like to learn about the others, why not check out this playlist right here.